Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries and brokers from across the country. And joining me on this segment is Roberta Caputo. She's the founder of Capital Business Solutions. Roberta, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your work and specifically who are the types of folks that you specialize in helping?
All right. Great question. Um, we started really in 2000. I started with another company in 2000 and organized a franchise opportunity for Capital Business Solutions in 2007. And we service our community. And that is from lower, middle, and upper market. And we have trained and expert intermediaries in each division of the company.
So, in the news, you hear a lot about the Great Resignation and folks leaving that Dilbert cube and perhaps going off on their own or starting a business. And oftentimes it's like the first, the time people are looking into doing that, so they don't know what they don't know. How has this Great Resignation affected your industry? Are you seeing an uptick in interest?
Absolutely. We have probably enjoyed our highest level of transaction and sales in the history, in the 20-year history that I've been in the business brokerage industry. So yeah, folks are looking to take their 401k monies, convert them, use them as a down payment, and realize the American dream. And in the meantime, middle and upper market, well, middle market seems to be, I don't know if lowering their expectations is a good way to put it, but they're certainly looking where historically they would want companies with an EBITDA of $2 million or greater. Now, a lot of them are doing roll-ups with smaller, lower market companies. They're looking at opportunities in the $500,000 EBITDA range, and it is putting a tremendous shortage of businesses for sale. We just don't, supply and demand aren't on the same level right now. So demand is much greater than supply.
Now, speaking of that, doesn't that make it more of a seller's market? So this may be a good time if you've ever been considering selling. This might be a great time to take that idea more seriously.
Absolutely. Yes, indeed. We are seeing after 2008, there was a huge plunge, nosedive, not only in the economy, but in the value of businesses. The multipliers were at historic lows, and it literally took about 10 years to start to edge up back to that. I will say now, finally, they have surpassed the bull market of 2007.
So that's an interesting situation now because this is another crisis, obviously unlike the recession, but this particular pandemic hasn't affected business valuations as badly as the previous?
Well, you can't make a sweeping statement like that because certainly there are some industries, restaurant industry, for example, that has been decimated and devastated by the pandemic. But then there are a myriad of other industries, anything having to do with healthcare, medical, transportation, services that have just skyrocketed. So there are segments of the economy that are experiencing much higher demand than perhaps historically they ever had. But there are other industries that were severely hurt by the pandemic.
So people that may be considering selling their business and now may be moving up that plan a couple of years as a result of this great opportunity, and a seller's market, this oftentimes is the first time they're even selling a business for most families. Most folks have been
Absolutely.
invested 20, 30, 40 years of their lives in this. So, what kind of, you know, questions should they be asking? I'd imagine that there are concerns on their minds and they don't know quite what to ask. So, what should they be asking you when they reach out
Well,
to you?
I will tell you, I'm a materials expert for Kaplan University, and we just gave a speech about that. We'd like to be able to start counseling folks well in advance of wanting to sell. And there's a few reasons for that. A lot of times we're able to give consult as to what needs to be done and what needs to be put in order. Perhaps some changes, an improvement in infrastructure. There's a whole list of different things that can bolster bottom line profit, which will, of course, affect the resale. Uh, but again, and also a lot of times the private equity groups want, and this is for the larger types of businesses, not for folks that are buying a job for themselves, but people that are investment people. They want generally the principal to stay on with them for a period of time. So the worst thing that could happen is that people reach out, which unfortunately they often do. When they come and they say, "Listen, I've had it. I don't want another day in that company. Get me out." That's not ideal, not for them, their company, or the folks that are buying it. So they should, number one, make sure that there is no commingling of funds, that their books and records are in order. We're finding a lot of companies that were started as a mom and pop and have grown into a middle market type of opportunity. They've never shed those practices, if you will. And so what we like to try and do is, let's say they're only doing taxes once a year. Well, it's important, and investment companies, they want to see trailing 12 months. You'll hear TTM, that's what they're referring to. They want to look at quarterly P&Ls and balance sheets. They want, in addition to the year end. So there's a lot of information that um, either has to be cleaned up, or practices that have to be implemented in order to really make their company saleable at the highest price possible for them.
You mentioned a mistake that a lot of people make, commingling their funds, so it muddies up the finances on paper. Are there any other big mistakes, common mistakes, or pitfalls that you find business owners making that you can kind of warn people about as they
Yeah,
get ready to
I
sell their
will. I will
business?
say that a lot of people, I'll ask them, number one, there is value to having contractual relationships with either your suppliers or your customers, or your uh, the whole supply chain. And people say, "Oh no, we've been doing business with them for decades. They never raise our price. They only go to us." Well, that's not sufficient, because from an outsider looking in, they feel that that's your particular relationship. So you really need, whenever possible, to try to transition into, at least even minimally, a 1 year contract. Even if there's a cancellation clause, it just gives people the warm and fuzzies that there's more than just a handshake and a relationship that's driving business to the company.
That's a writer downer right there. That's a sage piece of advice. Roberta, what inspired you to get into this business of being an intermediary and helping folks sell their businesses? How did you get started?
Well, quite honestly, it took me 2 years. I was at a point, I had been in the electronics industry for a number of years, had a very successful sales rep firm, and the writing was on the wall. Did I lose you, Mark?
I'm still here.
Oh,
I
okay.
can still see you.
Oh, okay. Very good. There we go. So the writing was on the wall that all manufacturing, when Motorola in my area had first a 50,000 square foot factory, then a 100,000 square foot factory, and all the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, were shutting down US based manufacturing and shipping it to uh, China, Japan, Vietnam, Thailand. I knew that it was time for me to look for another career. So I really empathize with all these folks that have been doing something and love doing it. And now, because of the pandemic, and sometimes it's because of illness or just a myriad of other reasons, that people have to either move on, sell, look for a new career. Uh, that it takes time and you have to be thoughtful. You should definitely speak with an intermediary because we have our hand, on the pulse of what's going on and what's growing and what's an exciting new field to enter and try to understand not only what their skill set is and what their translatable skills are, but also what their passions are. Because I'm a firm believer that when you love what you do, you will generally excel at it.
Absolutely. Roberta, before I ask you my last question,
Okay.
what would you say is the most important thing that a person should consider when they're thinking of selling their business and they want to choose an intermediary to work with? What should they look for?
Well, that's a great question. Um, Unfortunately, in this country, you're only presently required to have a real estate license in order to promote that you're a business broker. And there's a very distinct skill set that's necessary in order to sell businesses. So, what I would say is, I would number one, make sure that they are 100% dedicated to the business brokerage industry or M&A, whatever path or whatever combination. But uh, if they're not a full service organization, if they don't have folks to do the valuations, the certified information memorandums, the SIMs, the prospectuses, if they don't have a very strong group of affiliates that facilitates deal flow and structure, et cetera, from beginning to end, it would put them at a deficit. So, I don't, I'm a licensed broker in many states, and yet I've never sold a home. And when it was time for me to sell my home, I called in a professional realtor because they had developed the expertise and the skill set, which I have not. When it comes to business brokerage, you need to go with a company that only deals in business brokerage or may have a separate division that does real estate just to help folks with relocation, et cetera. But their core competency is in the business brokerage arena.
Terrific. For folks listening now that are considering selling their business or looking for a business to purchase and would like to speak with you, how do they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Well, our website is www.capitalbbw.com, and that's for worldwide brokers. And we have an 800 number, 800-690-8993. And we will match you with the right broker in your area and with the given expertise. Although we are generalists, we have a lot of specialists, and we do work on a team concept. So you will be well managed and treated.
Roberta, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights with my audience today. And I wish you continued success for you and for
Thank
all of your
you.
clients.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
That was Roberta Caputo. She's the founder of Capital Business Solutions. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers to grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.